Trades and injuries, injuries and trades, so many moves as teams deal with injured players and make moves to improve their chances for the playoffs. But how do they impact your dynasty rosters? Well, we're here to help tonight on the Rod Pod. It's time to pull up a chair and talk some dynasty football. I am your host, J.J. Wenner, and this is the Rider Dynasty Podcast. With me are my co-hosts. Finally, the three of us are in the same spot.
Woo-hoo.
Been a minute. Jameson Hutchinson, Joe Harlow. How the F are you, my friends?
Doing good. It's been a while.
It has. I've been better, been worse. Been an interesting couple of weeks.
Well, it's good to have you back in the echo chamber. It looks like you're in space, like flying at us. I love it. But let's jump hyperspace. Let's jump right into it. The trade deadline has come and gone, and it felt like there was more activity than ever, gentlemen. I would love if we could go through the trades and evaluate if it moves the needle for either of you from a dynasty perspective. Like, I don't care at all about the compensation. They may have traded a Lamborghini for a Peugeot. I don't care. I only want to know your dynasty thoughts. Now, Jameson, I hate to do this to you, but we're going to start off with IDP, which I know is your favorite. So we're going to, just let you go solo on a few of these. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm going to do my best. We'll see. Pray for me.
Listen, I always do. Let's hit some IDP players, sir. Barrett Browning went to the Cardinals, 25 years old, playing a career low in snap percentage. Joe, any interest at all?
A little bit. I think they don't have much in terms of edge rushers on the team right now, with BJ Ojolari hurt, Darius Robinson, more of an interior rusher, ideally. I think he's interesting. He did have some good moments with the Broncos before being injured this year. So in a deeper dynasty league, he's definitely worth a pickup, but I'm not expecting a edge one anytime soon.
Same for me. Not starting him week to week. Deep enough roster, I'd be willing to throw him on the bottom end. Actually,
if you're in like a 3 DE league, sure, especially as bye weeks are coming.
All right, well, let's move on then because there's no reason to dwell. Preston Smith went to the Steelers, 32, Joe, 2.5 sacks on the year. Kind of playing not many snaps for the Packers, only 54%. What do you think about going to the Steelers?
It's a depth move. It's a good depth move. Him and the other Smith brother, I think, are going to be significantly better football moves than IDP moves. So now if Alex Highsmith or TJ Watt misses time, I think Preston will have some more juice to him. It could be playable, but right now not super interested.
All right, well then let's move on. I'm kind of in the same boat with Preston Smith. Yeah. Deep enough league, I'll put him on, especially with some bye weeks, but not going out of my way. Ooh, let's talk about some corners, or people who formerly played corner. Tre'Davious White got traded to the Ravens, 29 years old, 2 passes defended this year, no INTs, final year of contract. Jameson, any thoughts about my man Tre'Davious?
Tre'Davious has been graded as one of the worst defensive backs in the league so far this year. Hasn't played very well. He goes to the Ravens, who couldn't stop a nosebleed right now. You're just basically getting another body there, but not as the name is very pretty, but the production just has not been there for the once former great. Hopefully he can turn it around, but it's looked pretty bad.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of highlights at Tre'Davious White, but usually as somebody's going past him rather quickly. So not ideal.
It makes sense for the Ravens to have picked him up, but
if anybody can do something with him.
Yeah.
The Ravens are good at finding, much like Belichick used to be for the Patriots. He can find what a person can do and just make him do that.
Yeah.
It's not a bad skill to have as a coach or talent evaluator. The other corner who moved, Marshawn Lattimore, went to the Commanders. Any thoughts, Joe? Like, are you good move, bad move, lateral move?
Again, makes sense for the Commanders. He's an outside corner, so I really don't care about him for IDP purposes, but they gave up a lot for him, which, again, not a huge deal. I guess a lot, relatively. A third and a fourth, I think. But again, it makes sense. The team's overachieved, and they're in the thick of the playoff hunt, leading the division by a game or two. So
Yeah.
he's definitely not what he once was, but he's better than Emmanuel Forbes.
That's a good statement. That is true. You got to make hay while the sun shines. You know, they might not sniff another playoff run, so you never know. So if you're on your way, might as well try to make the most of it as you can. Last big move on the IDP side, gentlemen, Zadarius Smith going to the Lions. He's been playing well. Any interest, Joe?
This is definitely the most interesting of these IDP moves. Again, I'm more interested, but if I'm in a shallow league with IDP, a couple of IDP slots, not interested, but two DNs, D linemen or more, starting to get a little interested. Aiden Hutchinson being down hurts them a lot, but Zadarius Smith is really good. He fits perfectly. It's a great NFL move, but he's probably a borderline top 24, maybe probably like DN 30 right now is probably where he'd be. But,
so you're going to be looking for the good matchups to start him.
Yeah.
Right? Bye weeks, he's going to be filling in, but, keep him on your radar. The old man just seems to know how to play, knows how to get to the quarterback, which is always a great thing. Now, let's switch
his pass
to the
rush
offense.
metrics from PFF are awesome.
Yes.
He's top 12 win rate so far. So,
listen, sometimes the older, like you develop certain skills as you get older. And as long as you can keep using them, Calais Campbell is one of those guys.
God, he's still so good.
Like, I don't know how he is still as good as he is, but he knows what he's doing, and it works for him. So, speaking of old guys, let's switch to the offense. And Mike Williams went from my beloved Jets, this is a Jets podcast, to the Steelers. He had done nothing for the Jets, but Jameson, is there any interest whatsoever with Mike Williams?
I would say a little bit. A lot of Aaron Rodgers' play is time and rhythm, and Mike Williams is basically a deep ball specialist. That's not really a timing and rhythm. And with the way the Russell Wilson Steelers offense is played, they just throw bombs left hash, right hash to George Pickens. They're going to run the ball and they're going to do play action. That's what they're going to try to do. So I think it actually sets up really nice for Mike Williams. It's not sure if you're getting a whole lot out of it, but the other thing about it too is like George Pickens has been totally off the field for run plays. It's been very obvious. He has not been playing like the full-time wide receiver. Whether I know he's good for fantasy and stuff, but I just think they need another body. Van Jefferson's been the wide receiver 2 for him right now. That's brutal. So do I think Mike Williams is going to set the world on fire? No. But do I think this is much better fit than where he was with the New York Jets? I do. So,
Joe?
Pick him up in a best ball league. He's a good fit. I think a lot of these guys make sense NFL-wise, but we'll see if he does anything. Roman Wilson hasn't seen the field yet. He's been hurt. Van Jefferson's a good route runner, but then George Pickens, like you said, on one of Matt Harmon's podcasts today I listened to, that Scotty Miller is right now their 13 personnel wide receiver. So that says enough.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But do you remember when Scotty Miller had that moment with Tom Brady on the Bucs?
Mm-hmm.
But he just could never catch a ball.
Yeah.
That little thing. Little issue.
Somewhat important.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, the next big move was Jonathon Mingo to the Cowboys to give a weapon to Cooper Rush. Joe, any Mingo love?
No, I don't want to be mean to him, so I'm not gonna. Dallas, I just don't understand what they're doing at all.
Go on. What do you mean?
With skipping ahead a little bit, Dak Prescott's injury. It's like this is the time for them to just kind of throw in the towel. They're not going anywhere, but they're gonna spend on Jonathon Mingo more than what DeAndre Hopkins or Diontae Johnson or is worth. They paid more for him than they got for Amari Cooper a couple of years ago. Granted, rookie contract, he's 24, but and also it doesn't make sense as a team fit. It's like Mingo projects best as a big slot player. CeeDee Lamb is best from the slot. And now with a backup quarterback, you'd want your best player in the slot. So now you're just trading for Jonathon Mingo, who was awful because he was out of position, and are going to put him out of position. I feel bad for Mingo, but like
it happens, unfortunately, in the NFL, right? Some players just get, I don't know what word I'm looking for, just left alone on an island, deserted.
Yeah. I just think he's been set up to fail since the get-go. Yeah. He's been in the league 2 years. This will be his third coaching staff. He had Frank Reich, Dave Canales, now he's going with Mike McCarthy, who could get canned this year the way the Cowgirls are playing, but it just doesn't make sense. But the Cowboys don't make any sense either. I mean, they also spent a 4th-round pick on Trey Lance, and instead of seeing what they got, they're going to play Cooper Rush. So.
Yeah, I don't know why they aren't starting Lance.
Well, because Trey Lance takes a creative offensive mind to make useful.
That's fair.
Right? If he was with LaFleur up in Green Bay, and when Love went out, he would have found a way to get him some touches. I mean, but Mike McCarthy hasn't had an original offensive idea since early 2000s. Ever? I was going to be nice.
You don't have to be nice, but okay. I just... like I said, I feel bad for Mingo, especially, he's on this rookie contract, so I guess that's decent, but it doesn't, the move didn't make sense for the Cowboys. The fit doesn't make sense, whether you feel like Jalen Tolbert is going to be a thing or not. Brandon Cooks, he's, he graduated with Moses. That's how old he is, but it just it doesn't make any sense, and Mingo's just going to be one of these guys who never really got a fair shot in the NFL. Whether he succeeds or not is one thing, but it's been set up to fail from the get-go, and he's a certain player that needs a certain position to excel. He's not been put into it. He's not going to be here either, so it just I think it's kind of a shame.
Well, according to PFF, he is the 90th of 91 receivers in overall grade.
And he was
so he's not the worst.
Who is the worst? Do you have that up?
No, I didn't look.
Very curious, but
yeah. The one thing before we move on, the Cowboys basically traded a 5th or a 4th-round pick for the 5th wide receiver on the Panthers, which is known as like the worst wide receiving core in the league. One of them. It just, I mean, they got like David Moore playing, Jalen Coker. I talked on the pod that I was a little bit of a coke head. That obviously didn't work out this past week. But Xavier Leggett, and there's somebody else. But I mean, basically,
the ghost of Adam Thielen.
Thielen, there we go. So Mingo would have been the 5th wide receiver on that team, and he gets 4th-round pick. So good for Carolina. It's about time they fleece somebody.
I mean, Jalen Tolbert's been fine, but he went 80th overall. This pick's probably going to be like 110. So it's like you basically just traded for a little worse version of Jalen Tolbert. It's like I feel like you'd just rather would take a shot at that point. So.
Yeah.
All right. So I just over to PFF. They have 130 players ranked, and Mingo was 127, followed by Jalen Hyatt, Johnny Wilson, and Jalen Polk.
Yeah. Not very good company.
But hey, he's right behind Mason Tipton, Jalen McMillan, and Chris Conley. Yikes. Yeah, it gets kind of ugly in there. Sorry, guys. Well, let's jump to the last player. Maybe a little bit of interest. Khalil Herbert to the Bengals. Jameson, That's your neck of the woods, right?
Yeah, it's this is basically Zach Moss and Chase Brown were more thunder and lightning. I think Khalil Herbert's more lightning to Chase Brown's lightning. They're more of a similar player. Travion Williams is a guy who's been on the Bengals roster for forever, and he's basically been in the reserve role. He gets pulled up. He can't pass protect worth a damn. I mean, he got obliterated this past week. They had Chris Evans, who got hurt before the season began, who was a really nice player. You know, played at Michigan, did some decent stuff, and I think they were going to depend on him a little bit as the third running back. But they've kind of ran out of running backs outside of Chase Brown, and we know he was a workhorse at Illinois. But the problem is that's about it for the Bengals. They needed another body. He was cheap. I've seen some talk on the Twitter machine that people thought Khalil Herbert would be the best running back on the Bengals roster right now. I beg to differ. I think that's a little tough, but I think he's worth a stash. I think he's worth like a low end Dynasty. Just see if you can run a flyer to go grab him. I mean, he's going to be the RB2. Anything happens, Chase Brown, he would definitely be over Travion Williams and be the RB1. And an offense where Joe Burrow is slinging it. I mean, he's top 5 passer right now in the NFL. All the metrics, behind Lamar Jackson, he's right up there with them. If they had a better win rate or a win percentage, I think he'd be more of the MVP talk. So I want to be a part of this offense. I think Khalil Herbert was a nice but necessary uh, pick for the Bengals. And like I said, it's more lightning to lightning, but a lot of people out there like Khalil Herbert. So I think it's worth a stash.
10 total touches so far this year, Joe. Do you like Khalil?
I do. I actually think Chase, he would have been my comp for Chase Brown. I think it's a weird fit. It was like, yeah, Chase Brown is not a good third down back. He can't block at all. Travion, he's better than Travion, but that's the lowest bar possible. And Khalil Herbert also can't block, so I don't know what they're going to do on third down. They're just going to move a tight end there, or
Chuck and Duck?
yeah, but I don't know. But I think it's interesting. If I were a Chase Brown owner, I'd be a little manager. I'd be scared or annoyed, probably is a better word. But I think it's probably going to be a 70-30 split. Herbert's good. People thought he was the next big running back prospect or breakout guy before Swift and Roschon came in. But yeah, he's the one I'm most interested in of all these guys that we've talked about for sure. So, but I'm still not super. I'd throw a third rounder at him just to see what happens. Chase Brown is not going to get 100% of touches again.
I'd beg to differ just a little bit, not to like totally poo-poo on it, but I think Chase Brown, like especially rest of the year, I think he ends up being like an awesome play. I don't think Khalil Herbert is going to like Zach Moss and Chase Brown were doing basically 50-50 for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chase Brown kind of snuck up a little bit and it was like 60-40. But I mean, I think this ends up being like Chase Brown world and everybody lives in it. And, Khalil Herbert ends up a little bit, but I think he can end up being a workhorse the rest of the year if that's what needs to be. I mean, the thing about Khalil Herbert is he was the third running back behind Roschon Johnson and DeAndre Swift. I don't know if this is a DeAndre Swift podcast. I've never been a huge fan. I've kind of like Roschon. We know the Bears are stupid. That's a different discussion for a different day. But, this is the running back 3 on the Chicago Bears coming to Cincinnati. So I'm not, if you are a Chase Brown owner, I think you should be feeling really good right now, rest of season for him.
To hedge that, I've never been a big believer in Chase Brown's talent. But he's still top 18 running back rest of the season, probably. I think you'd probably put him closer to running back 1, but I'm not there just on the talent. But I don't think it's like a death knell for Chase Brown at all. And I do clearly expect him to be the running back 1 on the team. Chicago, God, Herbert should have been the running back 1. Roschon the third down and power back, and then Swift should just never have been signed.
That is a true statement. Now, gentlemen, I want to talk about some players coming back from injury or leaving on injuries. But before we do, let's get a word from our sponsors. Keep grinding this season with IDP Plus. Visit idpplus.com and for a limited time, get 20% off any subscription with the promo code PROPS. Get access to our tools, data, IDP articles, and don't miss out on our subscriber Discord. So go to IDP Plus and start your march towards fantasy glory today. All right, Jameson, who do you have for us to discuss first?
We've got a lot of injuries to go through. We got some guys leaving. We got some guys returning. I want to talk about the guys leaving real quick.
All right.
2 quarterbacks. We got Dak Prescott and Trevor Lawrence. Dak Prescott seems to be injury. He's going to go on IR. Seems like it could be a season ender. And I think that, we'll talk about the Cowboys pass catchers. And then Trevor Lawrence is kind of a wild card right now. He's got a shoulder injury. Some reports he might need surgery. Some reports he might not. But both these teams are in like really bad spots to where they might, kind of call it a day and shut him down for the season, which, Brian Thomas Jr. has been a top 12 wide receiver. We've got CeeDee Lamb, top 5 wide receiver. I think it affects those guys a lot. And just kind of get a feel on how the environments go for these offenses. Because, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb were basically the Cowboys' offense. So, especially with Dak out, how would you feel about CeeDee Lamb? I know he might miss this week, but just rest of season.
I'd still have Lamb as a wide receiver 1, but it'd be more that 10-12 range, that frustrating hit or miss type of play, but don't love it. Again, for Dak and Trevor, I kind of hope they shut him down the rest of the year. I think it just would make sense more for their dynasty outlooks and NFL dynasty outlooks. But I think Jacksonville is a smarter organization right now, which is horrifying to say.
Don't give them too much credit now.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not giving them credit. We're talking about Dallas.
Yeah, true.
Talk about like 1 brain cell compared to 2. That makes a little more sense.
Yeah,
they're still double, Jameson. It's still double.
That is true. But I think both of those are pretty interesting. Like Trevor Lawrence being out and they got McCorkle Jones starting. I think Brian Thomas Jr., I'm not sure if he's even startable if you actually have a backup this week. Like I benched Brian Thomas Jr. for Jameson Williams, who's a kind of a boomer bust, guy sitting on my bench. Like I'd rather just take a chance on those guys than start basically any of these pass catchers for the Jaguars going forward with Mac Jones starting.
Now, I guess my question would be then, like we've seen what Justin Jefferson does with Sam Darnold. I don't think Sam Darnold is a world beater. He's better than Cooper Rush and Mac Jones. But do we think a high-end receiver can't carry a bad quarterback?
I don't think so in this spot. I know Cooper Rush in the past has had some good stuff with CeeDee Lamb, but the problem was there was more around the offense than just CeeDee Lamb. Like they don't have a run game. They have literally Jake Ferguson and no other wide receivers. So if they just want to double team CeeDee Lamb, take him out of the game. They could,
Jonathon Mingo?
Well, excuse me, I forgot the brand new acquisition. That's on me.
Lord.
But I think that kind of proves my point. I think if you have CeeDee Lamb, you're still going to have to start him every week, but you just got to close your eyes and pray he kind of gets there maybe in garbage time, if that. But if he ends up hurt too, that maybe if it's bad enough, maybe shut him down until he's fully healthy, or it just things are dire right now.
So you're saying I should be looking for starting Brandon Aubrey because he's going to be kicking 70-yard field goals.
70, 75, yeah, I would say so. If they can get out of their own end zone. But the other person I want to talk about before we get to some guys returning is Chris Olave.
Okay.
Having his 5th concussion since college, I believe 4th since he's been in the NFL. He just came back from one a couple weeks ago, got another one. I expect him to go on IR, but the other part of it is just kind of his long-term with Derek Carr. We talked about the Saints just got rid of their head coach. They're in cap hell. Things are getting pretty tough in New Orleans, but I'm just kind of curious to see how you guys feel about Chris Olave going forward. Even if he's out for 4 games, is that maybe like a buy low window? Are you still going to start him? Because it's been very hit or miss with him this year.
So I guess my question is, yes, he's had a couple concussions, but you have to figure out what side of the concussion reaction he's on. Is he going to be a Tua who doesn't really care or Brandon Cooks, right? Because you remember Brandon Cooks went through that stretch, where he seemed to have multiple concussions like year after year after year. Then they kind of went away and he was healthy for a while. I don't know. I don't think Chris Olave's like Eric Lindros, to go hockey. Like, I loved Eric when he played for the Flyers. He was great, but eventually got to a point where all you had to do was touch him and he got a concussion. Do we think that's where Chris Olave is right now, Joe?
I don't think so. I think not having hospital ball aficionado Derek Carr will help, but he's dynasty wise, he's a buy low to me. Just he's still an awesome receiver. All the metrics were looking really good. That this was supposed to be the year he really turned into wide receiver one. I think on film he was still really good when he wasn't getting killed, but yeah, it just sucks. I wouldn't sell him in any league unless someone was still willing to give that wide receiver one value that he was getting this time last year, but just sucks for the dude.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Jameson?
Yeah, I just trying to, if I could, I'd probably just try to get away from it. I like Chris Olave, but I think situation's pretty bad in New Orleans and just overall in general. So kind of wait and see on the concussion stuff. Like I said, if Derek Carr wasn't getting him killed, he's like the Jimmy Garoppolo Jr. of hospital balls. So it's just gotten pretty goofy. But we'll move on to some guys who are returning. A guy who almost tanked my team, but we're starting to get him back. Christian McCaffrey will be making his debut this week. I expect him to get the full workload every time Kyle Shanahan has one of these running backs who comes back from injury. He does not lay off as far as kind of easing him in. He just expects business as usual. So if you have Christian McCaffrey and you're worried about the workload stuff, I think personally that he's just going to be just like it was last year. I think he's going to get the bulk of the carries. I don't expect Jordan Mason to get much stuff. I don't know if you guys disagree with that at all, but I think he just goes in and kind of business as usual. NFC West has been really stout. Rams are getting some offensive linemen. I think the Rams have a good chance at winning. Seahawks have been feisty. Arizona's leading the NFC West. I mean, San Francisco can't really lay off the pedal right now, especially with some of the games that they've lost in division. So I expect Christian McCaffrey. I am curious before we move to the other guys. As far as dynasty value goes, do you guys have any thoughts on Christian McCaffrey?
I'm out on CMC as far as dynasty goes.
Okay. So you wouldn't even
no, because I don't. I have him in a couple leagues. I'm not trading him. I'm just going to let him expire on my roster. But I mean, I don't see the point in acquiring him because I don't think you're ever going to get anything back for him going forward.
I'd push back on that just as a contender. I'm a team who's 7-2, 6-2. What week are we in? Whatever right now, who's really pushing for that chip. I would be willing to give up probably even a late first for him just for the chance that he is himself for the last 7 weeks and pushes you to that championship. But yeah,
do you have any dynasty hopes past 1 year though?
Next year, I still think he could go in as the RB1, but that's it though. He's not. Yeah, it's a weird spot to have him in. There's a very limited group that I would buy him as. Again, it has to be a real contender just trying to push myself over the top.
So where do we have him ranked overall, like dynasty running backs? Is he top 5 for you, Jameson?
I would say so. Probably 4 or 5. I mean, the obvious guys like Bijan Robinson, ever since I went on my rant, he's been cooking, which very typical. But
that entire offense, buddy.
Yeah, well, they
good
can
work.
Me
can you
personally.
talk about the Jets?
No, I cannot. I know it's Jets podcast, but we leave you talking about the Jets. But
okay, that's fair.
I think CMC has got value. I think he's going to be the same next year.
So let me give you some Gibbs or CMC?
Be Gibbs. Just I think in special, like talking about contenders, I agree with Joe. I would give up a first for him, and then I think he'll have value next year. So even if you don't get our return on investment for CMC, say if you need him to put your team over the edge to win a championship this year, you sell him for like a second, maybe. Maybe like some sort of package deal the next year if you're trying to get out from him. But I still think he's got value. I feel like we've had this conversation a couple years now, just like we're trying to hit the right button, kind of like Derrick Henry, to exit the plane and try to get out without anybody getting scathed. But I think still think he's a valuable dynasty asset.
What about Achan? Achan or CMC?
That's a tough one.
I think Achan finishes this year running back 1, so I would lean Achan. Ever since Tua has been back, I mean, he has been. It's not been Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I mean, Achan's been the center of the offense.
Yeah.
Was the RB1 and wide receiver 2. What about Ken Walker? Ken Walker or CMC? Dynasty.
I'm going to lean Ken Walker there. I love the talent there, but I think that's where we're really getting into the.
So right now we're like CMC's out of the top 5. Because we put Bijan, we did Brees, we did
Gibbs,
Ken Walker, Gibbs, Achan. Are we talking about Kyron Williams, Saquon Barkley?
I think like for Ken Walker, I think I'd still lean CMC, but that's just me. I mean, it's borderline. Like Saquon, the way he's looked, I think CMC's upside still running back 1. So I mean, if we're not talking like the long window, I'd still take CMC over those guys.
Yeah, I will say Ken Walker, and I think Jonathan Taylor fits into this as well. If I'm a team, the same contender, it's like if I have Saquon Barkley on my team already and one of those guys, if I'm offered CMC for a JT Ken Walker, I'm probably going to consider that one straight up just for that push. But
if you're not contending, you're just saying, dynasty going forward.
In a startup, I would take Ken Walker over him. But
like this year, my timestamp is this year, next year. Like that's the only 2 years that I'm talking about. I'm not talking down the road. I would take CMC over JT straight up. I'd take him over Ken Walker straight up, even with like the injury stuff if people are scared of it. I mean, he ends up right in the finishing top 5. Like I think he's top 5 running back. I think he's going to get that workload. So
Taylor's someone I think we might have to talk about next week more.
He sucks. Respectfully.
Just because you say respectfully doesn't mean it was respectful.
So that's true. But just a couple guys we're just going to touch on real quick. Mike Evans returns. I think that's really interesting with Chris Godwin out because K. Dotton has gotten an obscene workload. And that means that Mike Evans, who kind of underperformed because Chris Godwin had been doing so well, I think he ends up could be a top 12 wide receiver rest of season, the way Baker's looked in Liam Cohen's offense. Got Nico Collins. I thought he was going to come back this week. It seems like he's going to be coming back next week. No Stephon Diggs, so it'll be him and Tank Dell just like old times last year. I think that gets very interesting because even when Steph Diggs was on the field first couple games, I mean, Nico Collins was going scorched earth, so that's another heavy hitter. And then TJ Hawkinson just returned this past week against the Colts. He had 3 for 27. He got eased in, and then Puka Nacua coming back from injury decided to get ejected. I don't know why. I wish he would have given me a call before doing so. I would have talked him out of it. But out of all these guys, there one that you guys are particularly excited for over the rest? I guess we'll go.
Sure, all 3.
Just because you need wide receiver bodies?
Well, Nico Collins was killing it before he left.
He was wide receiver 1. Rest of the season, how do we rank these 3 receivers? For me, it's Nico, Puka, Evans.
I would
say, well, definitely Nico. Is Puka going to keep punching people?
Hopefully,
I doubt it.
Then I would say Puka Evans. But Puka and Evans are going to be kind of close.
I agree.
I would take Mike Evans over Puka. I think he's got a much safer. I shouldn't say much safer floor, but I'm looking at it. I think Mike Evans could have some just like awesome games with Chris Godwin out.
I think if we're talking about overall score, I think Puka's going to have more catches, probably more yards. Evans will have more touchdowns.
Yeah.
So I think they're probably going to wash out.
Mm-hmm.
But it just depends on what flavor you like, I guess.
Yeah. Also, to amend, it's like Nico to me, then Gap, Puka, Mike. It's pretty close. But
Okay.
Nico still, even if he plays 1 or 2 less games, he's the clear one to me. He's going to go back to a top 5 wide receiver once he's back,
I know
in
we're
my opinion.
talking about Nico because he's done so well, but I mean, Texans, the one thing I am cautious about, this offensive line sucks. Bobby Sloak has not been good as a play caller this year. CJ Stroud's getting beat up. I know beginning of the season he was cooking, and they can go right back to it, but I do think I'm a little worried about not necessarily him failing, but just Texans offense outside of Joe Mixon the last month has not been great. So just a little bit
I
of
think
pause there.
they were already bad with Nico, and Nico was the savior there.
But yeah, crazy everything fell off the train
Yeah.
tracks once he left. So
Yeah, I
and
think
then
that it could go back to it, but maybe not as he was a wide receiver 1 by a mile. I don't think it'd be that much, but
right. And then just TJ Hawkinson, as far as tight ends go, I'd say rest of season. Are you excited about him? Do you think he ends up getting back to top 5 form? Or is he somebody that, I don't know, tight end is starting to cook a little bit more? Beginning of the year, it seemed like it was
yeah.
going to turn into a dumpster fire, but it seems like things are getting a little bit better. But as far as TJ Hawkinson, what do you guys think about him rest of season?
I think he's a pretty safe tight end to start going forward.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw what he did last week with a limited snap share, right? Like they easing him back in. They have a pretty easy matchup this week, right? New England. Wait, who are they playing?
Playing Jacksonville.
Oh yeah, Jacksonville.
So
Yeah, so that's good for tight ends. I would start him this week without much concern.
Fantasy Pros has him as tight end 13 rest of the season.
That's low.
Yeah. They have
I mean, like starting now until the end of the year, he'll have the 13th most points for a tight end. Right? That's what
Yeah.
that means, just to
That's
make
what
sure.
that means.
I don't believe that. I think he would be top 7.
I'd be
Rest of the
closer
season?
there. They still have Cade Otton over him, which when Mike Evans comes back,
That's
I'd drop him down a bit. Pitts, volatile. Tucker Craft, there's just so many mouths.
Yeah.
Laporta, Kincaid.
what about Mark
Pitts.
Andrews? Which one
Mark
would you
Andrews
rather
at
have?
14.
Oh, okay.
I would take
well,
Hawk.
I would take Hawkinson as well.
Yeah,
over
I think
Mark
I would
Andrews.
too.
So, if T Higgins still plays, keeps missing, I think Mike Gesicki ends up being like a top 12 tight end. He'll end up being the
Maybe.
second fiddle. I know it's not sexy, and I'm not comparing him to Hawkinson, but I think as long as T Higgins keeps missing, I mean, Gesicki's been really good in that role when Higgins is out, but it's I don't know, tight end landscape's a little goofy. I'm curious to see what happens to Jordan Addison because he hasn't really been good this year. And now that Hawkinson's back, does that totally wash him away? But I guess we'll see there.
Oh, wow.
I think
I haven't
Hawk
even
is the
thought
clear
of,
second option.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about Jordan Addison in a while.
He made a great catch this week.
So, but
Good for him.
that is
Yeah.
it for all of our injured players. Hopefully, we get more back and quit losing them. I'm begging for my fantasy teams to. Tired of seeing the red, the questionable, the doubtful,
Right.
the out. I just wish everybody get together just one time, celebrate, maybe get us a win. I don't know. We'll see.
Real quick, just T. Higgins or Chris Olave, dynasty-wise?
T. Higgins.
Olave.
Same.
I think T. Higgins ends up somewhere else next year. Kind of ends up being like the wide receiver 1 for one of these bad teams and ends up being I mean, T. Higgins been good this year when he's on the field. So
Okay.
I know
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I like Higgins. I think I like Olave more.
That's where I'm at.
I think Higgins been better than Olave as far as stats go, and I don't know. Olave stuff's just very. I hate the Saints. I think they suck. So,
Well, listen,
this
every
is true.
team in the NFL sucks except the Chiefs.
yeah, might be onto something. But that's all I got for the injured players of the world.
Well, Jameson, it's football season, right? And that means a trip to see your favorite team on the road. Well, with Expedia, you get the best prices when traveling, and we are thrilled for our partnership with them. Need a flight to Denver, rent a car in Miami, or a hotel in San Francisco? Go to idpplus.com/Expedia and build the best package to travel to the big game. All right, Joe, what do you have for us, sir?
So earlier, before the deadline, we had a couple of wide receivers dealt. I just kind of want to take some stock on where we're at with these guys. Diontae Johnson from Carolina to Baltimore, notably for less than Jonathon Mingo. Dallas. DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs from the Titans. Davante Adams to your Jets from the Raiders, who are a total shit show. That's another story. And then Amari Cooper to the Bills from the Browns. Just how are we feeling about these four?
I mean, if we're starting with Diontae Johnson, he didn't really do anything last week. He very limited snap count, but it was, I mean, he literally just walked onto their squad. I don't know what I feel about Diontae Johnson. I'm not as excited as I was before the season. However, when we saw what Bryce Young was, I'm more excited about Diontae now. But I don't think he's going to get the volume that he got with Andy Dalton. So, I don't know. Wide receiver, like low-end wide receiver 2 going forward rest of the year? Jameson, where are you at? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'll let Jameson go.
I'm worried about Diontae Johnson as somebody who I was really excited about. Goes to Baltimore, who has come out and said they're going to be he's going to be basically the wide receiver 3. They've got, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman. It's been fine. I finally quit that bad problem last year, and now they're starting to turn up. It's kind of frustrating, but there's just so many things going on and mouths to feed in Baltimore. I don't think Diontae Johnson will end up being reliable. Isaiah Likely's been out. He's going to be out tonight against the Bengals, but I mean, he'll be coming back. They played a lot of 12 personnel. They've had Mark Andrews and Likely on the field. So out of all the spots for him to be traded to, I think this is probably the worst one. And dynasty wise, I hate to say it, like even long term, if I could get out from him, I would, excuse me, and just see if I could get anything out of him, because I don't think this spot sets up very well for him.
Listen, I traded him and Andy Dalton for a first and a second after their first game.
Robbery.
And
yeah, that's good stuff.
It was robbery then, and even
yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy for that deal.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm completely out. I think he's the wide receiver 3 on the team, and it's not that they don't throw as much there. I don't care if he was the wide receiver 3 for someone else. I just don't think it's going to happen at this point. He seems like he's a locker room cancer. And just from everything that's been said, that he never was happy in Carolina and made it very known, despite asking to be traded away from Pittsburgh. And yeah, I just don't think it's going to happen. Maybe in like a Scott Fish Bowl league he's just a punt returner, so gets points that way. But yeah, I'm not interested anymore, which sucks because he's a super talented receiver. Like he could legit be a top 20 receiver in the league, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I think you're right. Well, what about D-Hop?
Good for D-Hop, man. He deserves this. Of these guys, I think I probably have him number 1 rest of the season of this group. The next name is pretty close, but he's obviously not what he was 5 years ago, but he's still a darn good receiver. He's still good. He's reliable. The one thing he can do that no one else in the wide receiver room for the Chiefs can do is catch the ball. So, especially contested catch wise, he still has a little bit of juice after the catch, maybe for like 5 yards instead of 50 yards, but like he used to have. But I think he's a legit wide receiver 2 rest of the season. I feel really good about him.
Yeah, I like D-Hop. I mean, easily the best offense he's ever played on.
For sure.
Probably the best head coach, the best quarterback.
Yeah. Had some good years with Watson early in Houston, but that's about.
I think if you are DeAndre Hopkins owner in Dynasty, you got a gift from God having him traded to the Chiefs. So, I mean, his Dynasty value was just dead in Tennessee, and people thought he was washed. If you don't need him this year, I think he is an awesome asset to sell. People are going to be excited about him. Like, if you want to build for the future, I think you could use him now. I mean, there was no value in DeAndre Hopkins 2 weeks ago outside of a late round. And I mean, people will see you just had a big game this past week. We'll see that. If you don't need him past like this year, like if you've got other people, I think it is an awesome spot. You got a gift to be able to get some value out of him. And I would be selling him right now. But
All right. What about Davante Adams? What are we feeling?
I think it's tough. I know him and Garrett Wilson both had really good games, but Jets offense, with all due respect, I still don't believe it. I know they had a good game, but just the pace, Aaron Rodgers at his age, I mean, he'd be a guy I'm trying to get away from too. And I know he had a good game last week, but I still don't trust it. I still don't trust the Jets, and I think it's more of a facade than anything. So I've been out on Davante Adams the last couple of years. I don't think his stuff in the Raiders, even though he was the only man in town, I don't think it was worthwhile with how bad the quarterback play's been. I don't think I think Garrett Wilson's kind of eating into a lot of it. I mean, he's gotten a big uptick ever since Davante Adams came to town, just because not everybody's going after him. So if Breece Hall gets going, I think that takes away from Adams and Garrett Wilson. So if I could try to sell him too, I hate coming on here and just sell everybody, sell, 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 sell. But that's how it is for me. So
Yeah, in a 3 wide receiver dynasty league as a contender, I'd be willing to throw a 2 for him. I think he's definitely usable rest of the season. But Fantasy Pros has him wide receiver 23 rest of the year, which feels probably about right. Maybe a little generous, but
I think with how the wide receivers have all gotten hurt, I think 23 probably fits. But in the normal world,
yeah.
I think that's a little rich. But
Yeah. And dynasty wise, I think he's still awesome on film. He's still a top 10 real life receiver. I just hope he goes. I think it'd be great if Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year. D Hop just decides to call it that he goes to the Chiefs. I think would be the perfect thing to happen, but that won't happen. So I think he can still have value next year and maybe a year after.
The one other thing, if he gets stuck on the Jets next year, and Aaron Rodgers decides to retire, I mean, don't expect the Jets to have a great quarterback, and that ends up being like another problem too. So that's just something to kind of think about. He could, obviously, they can tear it all down and trade him at the end of the year and do it that way, but I think that's something to take note of as well.
Yeah. And I guess last but not least is Amari Cooper. Jameson?
I think he's going to be better. He's got like a cast on his arm at the moment that he's working through. He hurt his hand last game that they played. I think he's kind of a sneaky buy right now at his price. I haven't seen him do much. I know he caught the touchdown pass against Buffalo, but outside of that, or his first game in Buffalo, but production-wise, I think throughout the year, the pass rate over expectation for Buffalo is starting to uptick. And I think it ends up being well for Amari Cooper, and I think he's in for some big games the rest of the year as long as he's healthy. So with this little time, I think he's worth the investment.
Joe, how would you rank those 4?
Diontae is clearly last. Hopkins, I'd still have 1. Adams, then Cooper, probably.
That was my order.
I think they're all.
Hopkins, Adams, Cooper, Diontae. Yeah.
Hopkins probably around wide receiver 20 rest of year. Adams 24, 26. Then Cooper probably 26 to 30 range. Feels about right. And then Diontae, I don't care. 40, 48.
Hit that.
All right, gentlemen. Is there anything else you would like to discuss?
One more thing which happened this morning that really confused me. The Panthers extended Chuba Hubbard on a 4-year deal for $33 million. Which
I'm sorry, wait, surprising. What happened when I was at school?
Chuba Hubbard signed a 4-year extension.
With the Panthers?
With the Panthers.
Don't they have Jonathan Brooks?
They do, and all the money for Miles Sanders still. I understand it. Like, Hubbard's probably the best player on their offense right now. Maybe lineman I'm forgetting, but yeah, the guards probably. But skill position wise, he's clearly the best player on their offense until Leggett, assuming where Leggett is right now. And they need some sort of competence, but I do think it makes a lot of sense not to give Jonathon Brooks bell cow work this year at any point. I think it makes real sense for his longevity. But a 4-year deal for, I think he's making the same amount as, I saw it earlier. He's making more than Derrick Henry is.
That's an interesting deal.
Yeah.
But, to me, that screams David Tepper and not quite understanding football as well as he probably should. Who's the GM there? Dan Morgan?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't hate it. Probably the way it works out, it ends up being like a 2-year deal, and they do the signing bonus and all that stuff. The thing about Dave Canales, he said he was going to be ignorant running the ball with how stubborn he was going to be or whatever he said. They get Jonathon Brooks back. This could, I don't like to compare it, but like David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, like if that's how they want to run the ball, Chuba Hubbard's been really good this year. Not just like he's been good. I mean, he has been one of the better backs in the league, especially for the situation that he's in. So I don't hate it. I mean, Jonathon Brooks, not saying he's free, but it's on a rookie deal, so it's not like you got to pay him as well till down the line. So, I mean, for Carolina, it's about as good as it's going to get. I mean, there's nobody else to pay anyways. They've all sucked. That's why they're in the position they've been in.
Yeah.
They need some sort of competence on the team.
They do, but I don't know if I'd necessarily compare them to Montgomery and Gibbs. Just because the Panthers aren't at the Lions level.
The way that they might end up using both of them, I guess. So it's going to be like the thunder and lightning to him. I mean, Chuba's been really good this year.
No, he has been. And I don't like. And when
I'm not comparing, like,
I think I just have a question more about Brooks. Why did they draft Brooks?
I think that was always a question, and even more so now. But it's especially since they traded up for him too. The optics are weird. Good for Chuba. I think it does make sense.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it doesn't make sense, and I don't want this to come off as anything bad about Chuba. I like Chuba.
No.
I just have a question about team building, direction, and just the general competence of your management team.
Yeah, and it's weird to have two. Say they can both end up being top 16 running backs. Sure, whatever, but having two of those is different than having two top 30 wide receivers. It's like,
and why do you want two great running backs when you don't have a quarterback yet? Like,
if Chuba's this good, you'd think you could get a third for Chuba at the deadline, and then just feed Miles Sanders to the Wolves. But
I don't know.
Good
for Chuba.
Yeah, they could technically afford it. It's not like they're paying a quarterback right now. And even if they drafted one, they still wouldn't have to. Like I said, I know the optics are bad because, paying running backs is stupid in the NFL. But not saying Carolina Panthers are smart, but I think it's something that they can do, and it's not going to kill them compared to if they were in a different situation.
Yeah, but it's like if you're building a house and you put on an 8-car garage and you only have a 1-bedroom, 1-bath house. Like, yeah, an 8-car garage is fine if you can afford it, but why do you need an 8-car garage if you only have 1 bed, 1 bath?
Realistically, it's probably one of those things that's just the new front office being like, this guy who has been here is doing well. Let's reward him so that players don't want to leave later on.
Like a locker room guy.
Yeah. And from what I've seen, he is a good locker room leader. So I think dynasty-wise, I'm not really concerned for Jonathon Brooks. I think it's probably better for him long-term. Probably sucks in 25. It's going to be annoying, both of them. I still expect Chuba to be the lead guy for the rest of the season, unless maybe the last 3-4 weeks they just like, we suck. Let's let Brooks loose. But 2026 and beyond, I think he's still a top 12 dynasty running back for me right now.
So psychologically, if you're Jonathan Brooks, you finally get activated. You've been rehabbing this whole time on your new team. And right before you make your season debut, they sign your backup, or who you perceived as your backup, to a 4-year contract. Does that F with your mind?
Probably not. I just got to go out there and do your own thing, make it happen. So I don't know. It's kind of difficult. Not saying Panthers ever make any sense, but I mean, I saw everybody on Twitter just dumping on it, and I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Is it the smartest move to pay a running back? Probably not. But at the same time, who else are they going to pay? They don't have to pay a quarterback at the moment. Not like any of these guys are. Not like Lamar Jackson's going to be coming up and they could throw money at him. So they're looking at another rookie in the draft. And, I just, like I said, it's the only playmaker on offense outside of Liggett and Coker. So those are both, on rookie deals too. So I think it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, and I don't think it's an overpay. Egregious. He's 9th highest paid running back, $8.3 million a year, $15 million guaranteed. So it is probably a 2-year deal, realistically. 0.3 more than DeAndre Swift and Derrick Henry, who Derrick Henry took a lower pay to be in Baltimore. Right. So if you're Chuba at 8.3 or DeAndre Swift at 8, I think it's a pretty easy discussion.
Absolutely. Especially after seeing DeAndre Swift bail on some pass blocking, getting Caleb killed last week. All right, gentlemen. It is time for tags where we share any final thoughts you might have and let everybody know where they can find us. Joe, you are up first.
You can find me at JoeLow63 on the Twitterverse, to be more grammatically correct. You can check out my Start Sit IDP article, which dropped earlier today and every week. And yeah, that's about it. Let's hope the Orioles actually sign someone.
Maybe Chuba Hubbard.
I'd take it.
Jameson, you are up, my friend.
Over on the Twitter machine at Jameson Rules. Got the DFS show on Sundays with Joel Worth over at IDP Plus. Check it out Sunday mornings. Other than that, I ain't got nothing this week, so that's about it for me.
Well, you got me, buddy, and that's enough sometimes. I'm at JJ Wenner on X, Twitter. I'm also at JJ Wenner on Blue Sky for those of us migrating over. Feel free to come join us. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened to the episode. Thank you to Joe and Jameson for all of their work. Be sure to tune in next week to the All Out Blitz with Doug Orth and myself. And then come back next Thursday for another Rod Pod. And from all of us to all of you, be safe, be well. And as always, boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.